Test, test. 1, 2, 3. Test, test.
Part of summer is swimming in my pool.
Oh, summer. It sounds good right now after what we just experienced, doesn't it? Grilling out, lawns being mowed, and pools opening. These are some of the things we expect with summer.
Hello, and welcome to the AHE Educator podcast summer series. Hi, guys. Hello, everyone. It is Brittany here, your friendly at-home educator. And I am back with episode 4 of the summer series. And this episode is very, very exciting. I am sitting down with the one, the only, Michael Venn, otherwise known as Teacher Michael. You may know him as a VIPKid Brand Ambassador. You may know him just from his YouTube videos, which is part of his brand ambassador thing, but he also just makes great YouTube videos for new VIPKid teachers. He's a great guy, and I was very honored to be able to sit down with him. This interview will be broken into 2 parts. So in this first part today that you will hear, we are talking all about circus school. Yes, you heard that right. Circus school. Side hustles. Michael is a master at side hustles. He does a lot of them, and he talks kind of about how he likes to approach those side hustles and which ones he does. And of course, VIPKid, how he got started with VIPKid, where he plans to go with VIPKid, and kind of, his whole backstory. It was really, really great to talk with him. He's a wonderful guy, and I am just excited for you guys to hear our conversation. So without further ado, let's go ahead and dive right in. So hello, Michael. I want to start out by saying thank you very much for sitting down with me and talking with me.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited.
Yes, I'm super excited. You're like a celebrity.
Oh my.
A VIPKid celebrity.
I know. It always has to be qualified.
Well, I wanted to start out by asking you where you are talking to me from.
Sure, yeah. So right now I'm on the east coast of Canada in Halifax, Nova Scotia, which I always explain. I've done a lot of traveling in the States, and not everybody knows where Halifax is. So I always tell people that it's just northeast of Maine. So that's where I am on the east coast of Canada.
Yes, and earlier you started out by saying you're experiencing a heat wave, right?
A rare heat wave, yeah. I mean, it's getting into the low 30s for us. I don't know how that translates into Fahrenheit, but it's just hot. It's really hot. We're not used to it out here. So it is welcomed, but I've been spending as much time as possible at the lake.
Well, I wish you cool wishes.
Thank you. I'll take them. I'll take them right now.
I'm in South Carolina, so it's definitely hot here too.
I would say so. I've been through South Carolina. It's gorgeous down there.
Yes, we just moved here from New Mexico, so it's very, very different from where we're coming from.
I bet.
Yep. So obviously you are a VIPKid teacher, obviously, but you wear a lot of different hats with VIPKid. So what exactly are all of the different things you do with VIPKid besides just being a teacher?
Sure. Well, of course, first and foremost, I am a teacher. So I do, I don't necessarily teach full-time hours, but I do teach quite often, usually 7 classes a day, 5 days a week. And then beyond that, I work as a brand ambassador. So part of my job as a brand ambassador is to create videos for YouTube, and more recently, some content for Instagram in the stories and also in my main feed. So those are kind of the 2 main hats that I wear. I did dabble for a little while in teaching some workshops. I did a TPR workshop to help other teachers with their TPR skills, but those are kind of the 2 main hats that I wear. And then I guess unofficially, I do work as a recruiting teacher. So I try to help people get hired on and that sort of thing. So that's kind of what takes up my VIPKid time right now.
Yeah. So, I mean, you do a lot, right? And I also know you have a lot going on outside of being a VIPKid teacher as well, which, in my opinion, is what makes you so special. What do you do outside of VIPKid teaching?
Well, I appreciate you saying that. And, VIPKid for me at the beginning and kind of currently was never supposed to be my full-time job. It was a side gig that was helping me live an artistic life. So I went to school as, and studied as an actor, and then I went on to circus school, and then I somehow fell into puppetry. So for the last couple of years, for various points in the year, I've worked as a touring puppeteer. So I've traveled all across the United States. I've been to China and Singapore performing shows. And so that's what I spend some of my time doing. And initially, VIPKid was just a way to fill in the gaps in between those performing contracts. So I would go on the road for a couple months at a time, and then I would come back to Nova Scotia, and I was like, geez, I'm out of work again. So it was really just a way to bridge the gap in between performing contracts. Now, after a couple years of touring, I'm trying to stay home a little bit more. So VIPKid has really become my main gig, and I kind of do puppetry on the side. And then above and beyond that, I run some Airbnb experiences. So I do a travel photography workshop. And my girlfriend and I recently, this summer, just started doing a craft beer and cider tour. So I don't know, for the last couple of years, I've just been like side gigging all the time and trying to piece, 4 or 5 different things together to form one career. And for me, that's how I like it. That's how I keep my work life exciting. And that's how I keep myself interested in the work that I'm doing. So I like it that way.
Well, there's a lot in there that I want to dive into.
Sure.
So first, starting with circus school, how do you get into circus school?
So in the city that I live, Halifax, ever since I was a kid, we host an international buskers festival. So for 10 days every summer when I was a kid, there would be acrobats and sword swallowers and jugglers who would travel here from various parts in the world and do their street shows. And that's where I was kind of first exposed to this world of traveling performers and these circus-y type people. And I always thought to myself, like, oh, wouldn't that be so cool just to like be a juggler and just travel all over the world and do a little juggling show. And so years later, as I went into theater school, that was one of the first things that we did in our first year was learn how to juggle. And then in our second or third year, we learned how to stilt walk. So I just kind of inadvertently started developing these skills that you might find in a circus. And then after I graduated, I spent a number of years kind of traveling and just kind of bumping around, doing a bunch of random odd jobs and stuff. And this idea of going to circus school just kept coming back into my head. I was training myself as a juggler, learning a lot from YouTube, learning different tricks and things like that. And it was one of those ideas, when you get an idea that just keeps nagging at you and it just won't go away. I really try to listen to those in my life. And they sort of really steered me in the direction that I've ended up going. So I know that when I have an idea, because, I have an ADHD kind of brain, I get a lot of ideas and not all of them stay with me. So I do find when I get an idea like that lasts for a year or 2 years or 3 years, I at a certain point, I can't ignore that thought. And circus was one of those things. And I knew that if I didn't pursue it in some way, I think that I would regret that. So I just went for it.
Yeah. Well, so you started out in theater school, you said?
Yes.
And did you finish that as like a 4-year degree kind of thing? So
Yeah,
just like an arts degree?
Yeah, exactly. I got a Bachelor of Fine Arts. It was a four-year degree. So that was my university qualification in order to be a VIPKid teacher, was my Bachelor of Fine Arts degree.
Okay. And then how do you like apply for circus school? It's something that really interests me because I was a dancer my whole life, like from the time I was like 2 to the time I was to now. And so like I never obviously, you can get a degree of fine arts in dance, but that's not something that I pursued. But, I went to school in Florida, and so these people, they would get jobs with like Cirque du Soleil and like Disney and all these crazy big companies, and they would talk about circus school. So I've always wanted to know, like, how do you get into circus school?
So to be honest, it's quite similar to how you would get into any other school. You have to apply, you have to go through the application process. And for me, I had to record a video that demonstrated some of my skills. So they don't tend to accept people who have I don't want to say no skill, but have no specialty or no discipline that they're currently working on. They like to take people on that have shown an interest or shown some sort of aptitude towards the thing that they want to work on further. So for me, that was juggling. And by the time I had applied to circus school, I had already been juggling for about 6 or 7 years. And so, yeah, I made a 10-minute tape, and part of it was just me speaking to the camera and telling them why I wanted to go to circus school, why I was passionate about circus and performance. And then the other part of the video was showing some of my stilt walking skills and juggling skills. And I did a little bit of fire spinning and things like that, some knife juggling. I tried to bust out all of the best tricks that I had to convince them that I was someone that they should take on. And thankfully they did.
Wow, that sounds very exciting. So you got into circus school. I'm guessing you graduated from circus school, and where did you go from there?
So from there, I ended up working with a company in New York for a couple of years, and they were sort of like a circus in education company. So I would go around and do little performances. And then for the rest of the week, it was kind of a week-long program. So we'd go into the school on Monday. We'd do a show for a couple hundred kids and sort of get them excited about circus skills. And then for the rest of the week, we would teach them how to juggle or how to plate spin or how to stilt walk. And then the students would perform a show on Friday. So that was kind of the week-long program. And I did that off and on for a couple of years. And then after that, I kind of went into puppetry, and I kind of haven't really gone back into any kind of circus since then. But yeah, that was kind of how it looked like for me right after graduation, was kind of straight into performing and teaching circus, which I loved.
So was that kind of your first interaction with teaching, especially like younger students?
It was sort of where I developed a style and where I really became confident as a teacher. But my first experience was a number of years earlier. Right after I graduated from university, I ended up going over to Italy, and I worked with a theater company there that used theater to teach English as a second language. So we would perform interactive English shows. And the idea behind that was really to get the kids out of the classroom and get them speaking English in a fun, more relaxed environment. Because I think the Italian school system, as I understood it at the time, was very, sit in a desk and look forward and repeat after the teacher. It was kind of very strict and structured like that. So our approach was to go in and sort of shake things up a little bit, have fun with the kids. And that has informed the way that I approach teaching now. I'm very much fun first, education a close second. And that's how I operate in my classroom.
So I know VIPKid isn't necessarily a traditional classroom, but did you ever envision yourself like pursuing teaching as kind of like a thing that you do for a long time?
Never.
Never?
Never. I did spend 1 year in a traditional classroom in Korea teaching English. And that's kind of where I learned that like being in a classroom 9 to 3 or 9 to 5, I don't even know what the hours are, but somewhere around there, 8 to 4, I don't know. But for me, that wasn't it. Like, I don't like that. I don't like going to the same place every day to do my job. And that just goes back to what I mentioned before of why I like having a whole bunch of different side gigs, is because I don't get burnt out on any one of them, and I don't get tired or complacent in any one of them. And I'm also not at the mercy of one employer. So I know that for people who only have one job, if you lose that one job, you have no source of income. It's like, to me, that's a terrifying thing. And so I like to diversify a little bit and say, okay, well, if that one thing isn't working for me at the moment, I still have 3 or 4 or 5 other ways to make money. And so I don't feel as vulnerable losing any one of my jobs. That's kind of how I approach it.
Yeah, I think that's very smart. I think there's a lot of risk involved in that too, though, because it's kind of risky starting like your own kind of thing, like your new thing with Airbnb. I mean, you don't know if people are going to come or if people are going to like it, or but props to you. I'm impressed.
Well, I want to speak to that a little bit because it can seem risky if you're quitting your main source of income and trying to start from scratch. But it's a lot less risky if you keep your main gig and sort of tiptoe into the world of freelancing and tiptoe into the world of side gigging and that sort of thing. So when I started doing the Airbnb experiences, it was only scary in that it was new, but there was no risk of like, well, what if no one books my experience? Like, well, no one books it. Not a big deal. I can still go and teach my classes, make my brand ambassador videos, go off and do puppetry, and I can still pay my rent. So, I like to approach things with as little risk as possible, even though it feels risky to do something new sometimes.
Well, speaking of risk, you joined VIPKid as a teacher pretty early on, like when it was first kind of a new thing, right? When did you start with VIPKid?
About 2.5 years ago, maybe a little bit more. At the time, there was less than 10,000 teachers.
And how did you hear about VIPKid? Because obviously it wasn't as big as it is now. So
you're absolutely right. At that point in time, it did feel a little bit more risky. But I was in a position where I kind of had nothing to lose. So I had just come off a 9-month contract with the puppet company. And like I said, I was out of work. And one of my good friends, his girlfriend, told me about it. She had found out from a friend, and she knew that I was looking for work, and specifically looking for work that sort of I controlled my schedule and that I was able to come and go from. And she said to me, Mike, I know you've taught in Korea. I know you have this skill or this experience as a performer. I think this job would be perfect for you. My friend told me about it. It's legit, or she said, it sounds legit. Why don't you look into it? So I did. And honestly, I didn't expect anything from the beginning. Like, I went through the application process and it seemed legit. And it wasn't until probably the 3rd or the 4th week when I was getting all these students and I was teaching all these classes. And then I actually got my first paycheck and I was like, are you kidding me? Like, it worked. It's working. Like, until the first check came in, I honestly had no idea that this was going to be a thing. And then from there, I just put my head down and really, really started taking it seriously.
Yeah, and so you're kind of known for your puppeteering skills and kind of how you bring that to your classroom. Did you always do that, like from the very beginning, or was it kind of an evolution? Like, how did you start to incorporate that?
That was definitely an evolution. I would say from the beginning, I definitely leaned really hard into my circus skills, like as a juggler mainly. That has been and always, I think, will be my go-to reward system for the kids. Mainly because I know that it's such a niche skill and not a lot of other teachers are able to offer that as a reward. So to me, that's just something to differentiate myself from other teachers and make it exciting for the kids. But there's also so much teaching potential in teaching numbers and different colors of the juggling balls and that sort of thing. So it's educational and it's fun. But I did have a hand puppet from the get-go. And I think the more experience I had touring with this theater company and the more that I learned from developing new shows and working with different types of puppets, I just started experimenting in the class. And it was, something for me that I was always learning something new. And I got inspired to start trying to build my own puppets and build my own props and see how it worked in class. And some of them work better than others. But for me, that's, again, what keeps me excited about the job is that I feel like I'm learning a new skill set and I'm developing something new at the same time as engaging with the students and helping to teach them.
Yeah, that seems to definitely, I mean, even that's true for me. I mean, I was a brick and mortar teacher, and teaching in an online classroom is completely different in terms of like how you approach students and how they're so different and how you have to deal with that. So I'm sure that, I mean, I can't imagine bringing as much puppeteering skill as you do into my classroom just because I've never had experience with that. But, you know, like you said, that's something that you learn that's new that kind of goes along with it.
Well, there is that, but then I look at other teachers and I say, I wish I could bring more like teaching knowledge into the classroom. Like, I don't have as much knowledge in terms of like how kids learn and their cognitive abilities and things to look for, or even the structure of the English language. Like, I'm very much a performance-based teacher, but I look at other people and I go, well, I wish I had your skill or your way of simplifying things. So, you know, that's what I love about looking and seeing at other teachers online, is that I can learn as much from them as they can learn from me, and hopefully we all get better together, you know?
Yeah, that's something that I 100% believe in. I mean, that's part of why I decided to start doing the podcast. So, I mean, it's great.
Yeah.
But I think that you serve as kind of like an inspiration, because a lot of people might hear about VIPKid and think, I have no idea. Like, I've never taught before. I don't know how to teach a kid, but you obviously do it and seem to do it well. So I think you kind of bring confidence to people who don't know, like who don't think they can do it.
I hope so. That's part of what I try to do. And I realized really early on when I started making videos on YouTube to try and help people like maybe beef up their profile a little bit or make a better video or take a better photograph, I kind of took for granted these, you know, video editing skills and things like that came more naturally to me, and people would reach out and go, yeah, that's great for you, but I don't know how to edit videos, and I don't know. And people say the same thing about the juggling and the puppetry. And so over the last year, I've really been trying to think to myself, how can I make this as easy to replicate for someone who has absolutely no juggling skill or no puppetry experience or no performance experience at all. So that's where my head has been at recently, trying to sort of tailor some of the things that I do to make them accessible for all teachers with all like varying levels of performance experience.
So that is it for part 1. I had to leave you with wanting a little bit more, so I hope you're not too angry at me. But remember, like I said, there is a part 2 coming out on this Thursday. That is August 8th, and so don't forget to listen then if you want to hear the rest of it. We have so much more that Michael and I talked about. Like I said before, he's a great guy, and I know he's an inspiration to me, and he's somebody that I looked up to when I was becoming a new VIPKid teacher, and so I know that he's got to be an inspiration for all of you. And of course, he's just a super interesting guy. So make sure you stay tuned and listen to part 2 as well, and let me know what you thought about part 1. As always, you can reach out to me on Instagram, on Facebook. I have my website linked in the description, and if you'd like to get in touch with Michael, I have the links to all of his social media in the description as well. I want to give you guys a task today at the end of this episode. I want you to share this episode with somebody who you think would enjoy it. That is the way that you can keep this podcast alive. Share it with your friends, and I would really, really appreciate it. Thank you so much for listening. And I will talk to you guys on Thursday. Stay tuned. I'm very excited. And don't forget to teach regularly, play often, and live your best life. Bye, guys. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of this podcast. If you haven't already, go ahead and subscribe and click the bell so you are notified when I upload a new episode. Also, you can check out my website by using the link in the description below, and all of my social media. I am on Instagram and Facebook, and I would love to meet you on there as well. And if you're interested, you can check out some of my older videos and my new videos here and here. Thank you for watching. Bye. Say bye-bye. Bye-bye. Oh, there it is. Bye-bye.